Being compliant is just straightforward. Being maliciously compliant? Well, that's another story. Welcome to this episode of Malicious Compliance. Our first one is from Possible Seaweed 4815. I used to work at a mid-sized company where our department had its own supply closet. Everyone knew the rules. Take what you need, don't hoard, and keep the area tidy. Simple enough, right? Apparently not for our new micromanaging office manager, Karen. Karen was obsessed with cutting costs. She'd swoop in like a hawk every morning, inspecting the supply closet. If a box of pens was a little lighter or the post-its weren't perfectly aligned, we'd get a stern email about unnecessary consumption. She even implemented a sign-out sheet for supplies. Want a highlighter? Better justify it in writing. One day, Karen decided to escalate. She put a lock on the supply closet and declared herself the sole key holder. If anyone needed something, they had to email her and wait for her to approve the request. This was, of course, on top of her other duties, so getting a new pen could take hours. Needless to say, productivity started to suffer. Cue malicious compliance. A coworker of mine, Tom, was a bit of a prankster, but always stayed within the rules. He decided to test Karen's new system to its limits. Every time he needed anything, no matter how small, he emailed Karen. Need a single paperclip? Email. Need to replace a dried out marker? Email. Stapler jammed? You guessed it. Email. Tom's meticulousness inspired the rest of us. Soon, the entire department was flooding Karen's inbox with individual requests. Since Karen insisted on handling every single one personally, she quickly became overwhelmed. Approving requests started taking days instead of hours. Meetings were delayed because people didn't have notebooks. Presentations stalled because someone was waiting for a dry erase marker. Management started noticing the bottleneck. Our department's performance metrics were plummeting, and everyone pointed the finger at the supply chain fiasco. Karen tried to defend her system, claiming we were being wasteful and needed structure, but evidence was clear. Her micromanagement was backfiring. After a particularly disastrous week, upper management stepped in. They not only revoked Karen's authority over the supply closet, but also gave her a formal reprimand. The lock was removed, the sign-out sheet disappeared, and we went back to the honor system. Karen, humiliated, kept a low profile after that. And for us, we may have lost a week of productivity, but the petty satisfaction of watching Karen drown in her own bureaucracy was worth every second. I can't think of a more satisfying way to effectively do exactly what you're being told, but be malicious about it at the same time. I'm glad this Karen got flooded in those emails and got reprimanded in the end. After all, OP and their coworkers only did what was asked. This next one is by Stendhal Syndrome. For reference, this took place back in the late 90s. I'd imagine school systems work much differently at the high school level now, and my kids aren't that old yet. Okay, so it was my senior year of high school, and I had just enough credits in my junior year to graduate. I had taken martial arts and taught it too, so I got an extra gym credit early. I changed my mind because I wanted to graduate with my friends. So I just loaded up my schedule that year with whatever I wanted or I thought would look good to colleges. A few AP courses like US government, physics, anatomy, and physiology, and some random stuff. The APs were a lot of work, and I had good test scores from last year already, and I wasn't looking to get lower scores on classes I didn't care about, so I dropped physics and government and a random jewelry 2 class. So I had 3 open nodes a day surrounding lunch. It was magical, and I still had 1 AP class, so I thought I wasn't messing around too much. Both my parents worked, so we didn't know anything was amiss. Till we realized we had a broken answering machine. Again, it was the 90s. Apparently my school was calling 3 times a day to tell us that I wasn't showing up to some study hall class I had been assigned to after I dropped a few classes. This hadn't happened other years, as it would just be a free period. Funny part was, the woman calling us was kind of a bitch about it. After the first few days, the messages started to get nasty. yet no one said a word to me in the school, or was anything sent home. This is also around the time my mom was starting her retirement from being a hairstylist, so she'd do like a week on and a week off, and now she's getting the calls. So she tells the woman she's okay with it. His grades are good. Technically, he could have graduated early. College APs are already out, so no biggie. Oh, that was apparently the wrong thing to say to this lady, cause she read my mom the riot act, going on about how irresponsible we all were, and how she was personally going to tank my applications. How could I be so brazen, etc, etc, etc. Crazy level of overreaction. Plus, she wouldn't stop calling for every single class despite my parents' approval. Repeated calls to the school, and eventually, they showed up face to face. It was by law they had to report unpre-approved truancy. So my mom sat down on it. They wouldn't accept her word over the phone or even face to face that I was allowed to leave, as I had previous years with zero issues. They wanted something in writing. I don't think any of it was legal or necessary, because the lady was telling my parents they had to put all kinds of stuff like they knew they were going to be detrimental to my learning, were essentially bad parents, etc, etc, etc. Crazy stuff. So my mom gets an idea. She says 100% they aren't writing anything like that. She looks it up, and it is a law that if a student has an unexcused absence, they have to notify the parents. So she started playing dumb, making this lady call her up every single period I missed. Then she would hem and haw about, do I allow him to miss this period, or is it a problem? Let me think. Then she'd say, sure, it's okay, this one time, but to call me if he misses anything else, because I'm not sure how I'd feel if he missed more, knowing full well I was missing 3 periods a day, every day until I graduated. They finally stopped calling like a month before I graduated. It was a solid 5 months of my mom messing with this woman named Sarah. Edit, so I'm a little shocked with some of the responses here with the overblown worry for the school. So more info or stuff you obviously missed. A, I could have graduated junior year. That means they would get $0 for my buns not being there at all. And or hope there's a kid in the district who couldn't get in still waiting. Which, by the way, doesn't work like that. B, very well-off district, easily top 10 in the state at the time and sometimes top 5. Very well-off state. School had all the extras. C, we had 9 periods a day. I had 3 off plus lunch. D, the biggest one, my parents didn't have a problem with it, and I was sub 18. That means it was okay. Common sense should have had this woman look at the student in question, see I'm easily graduating and didn't have a history of causing ruckus, and then listen to the freaking parents like the law says. 3 periods a day, people. Senior year. Could have graduated last. Regents, by the way. Like that means anything now. Parents' approval. Jeez. Shaking my damn head. I like how OP's mom got on board just to mess with this woman. I mean, at the end of the day, they just simply complied to what her wishes were and her desires were, but in the end, I don't even think this Sarah lady knew the actual fucking law. And fun fact, I had like 3 or 4 periods off my senior year too. Never had an issue. Graduated in 07. And our final one is from I Aim to Sneeze. When I was little, my mom sent me to a private religious school. My family isn't religious, but they felt like I'd get a better education there, and when I switched to public school later, I found they were right. I was pretty far ahead. This school had uniforms. Boys wore button-down shirts with the school logo and blue slacks. Girls wore jumpers. My mom hated cleaning and ironing these white, button-down shirts every day. I was one of 4 kids. Kids play and get grass stains. The shirts were taking up a lot of her time. Finally, she gave up and bought a bunch of white polo shirts and started sending us to school in those. Admin had a conniption fit about it and brought her in for a meeting. They opened the dress code rulebook and pointed out that these shirts were missing the logo, so they were in violation. My mom looked over the rules and confirmed that the lack of logo was the only violation. They said yes. She thanked them and left, and the school probably thought it was over. Just to be petty, they sent a school-wide memo regarding the dress code. My mom took every polo shirt and stitched a homemade logo onto them. It wasn't hard to do, as the logo was just the school's initials. Admin was furious, but during the next meeting, realized their hands were tied. The memo piqued the curiosity of other parents, and they started asking my mom where she got the new school shirts. Apparently, she wasn't the only one sick of ironing and getting grass stains out. Suddenly, I wasn't the only one wearing a polo shirt to school. The worst part for the school was that, despite tuition being pretty expensive, they also had a kickback deal going with the local clothing store for the uniforms. The store had a monopoly on the sale of those shirts. When the business started lagging, the store made their own version of the polos for sale. Eventually, the original shirts were phased out entirely. That was over 30 years ago, and my mom still loves telling that story. Edit, I'm cracking up, some of you calling my mom a Karen and clutching your pearls about the poor school losing revenue. You guys are acting like they had to put the school mascot down after they didn't make their nut on uniform kickbacks. I can assure you, they were, and still are, making money hand over fist and doing just fine. You guys typically side with the HOA as well when you read those stories? The sad thing is, the people probably bitching in the comments to the OP and complaining and saying they're harming the school or they harm the school, whatever, fail to realize that most private schools literally do rake it in, just off of tuition alone. But I love how their mom took those rules and actually applied them. Alright, that's enough maliciousness for the day. Well, that wraps up this episode of Malicious Compliance. If you liked the video, please drop a like, share my content on all of your social media, subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure to hit that bell so you're notified every time I upload, and drop a comment down below. It really helps with the algorithm and helps new people find my channel. Thanks for watching, thanks to my patrons and super thanks contributors. Have a great day and stay safe out there.